理由を聞いても、一人でいたいってことしか言ってくれなかった。それに、ほなみは。ほなみ？それって、アップルパイ？っていうかもしかして、その袋、全部アップルパイ？
恥ずかしいから、みんなには言わないでね。
Why is it always the drummers with the crippling addictions? Travis Barker battles with prescription drugs, Taylor Hawkins having over 10 different substances in his body at the time of his death, and Project Seikai's Honami with a brutal apple pie addiction, an addiction so crippling even the other Seikai members can't help but point out how many pies she eats on a regular basis. But that begs the question, how many pies could Honami eat before she dies of diabetes?
He wants to give us diabetes before this whole thing starts.
Now, just what is type 2 diabetes? According to the Cleveland Clinic, type 2 diabetes is a condition that happens when your blood sugar is too high. But how high is too high? According to BuzzRx, formerly Water Tree Health and Mayo Clinic, normal blood sugar for the average individual is between 70 to 100 milligrams per deciliter. Blood sugar is at 100 to 125 milligrams per deciliter is diagnosed as pre-diabetes. At 180 to 250 milligrams per deciliter, your blood is considered to be too high in blood glucose or hyperglycemic. At 250 milligrams per deciliter or higher requires medical treatment. If 2 or more readings are 300 milligrams per deciliter or higher in a row, this can lead to diabetic ketoacidosis, the rapid breakdown of fats in the liver becoming acids in the blood, and a diabetic coma. And at 600 milligrams per deciliter or higher is considered life-threatening, developing hyperglycemic hyperosmolar non-ketotic syndrome with clinical evidence of dehydration as you essentially mummify alive. This is because the sugar in your blood pulls all the water out of your cells through osmosis, the tendency of water to move from low concentration of solvents to a higher concentration. From this question, let's meet the middle at 100 milligrams per deciliter, as even though normal blood sugar is between 70 to 100 milligrams per deciliter, it is hard to say she eats a low sugar diet. Now, just how much sugar is 600 milligrams per deciliter? According to Apollo 24/7, 1 gram of pure glucose will raise your blood sugar about 5 milligrams per deciliter. Using this formula nets us 100 grams of sugar. However, this number is only true if we were using pure glucose. And while this may seem like a nitpick, not all sugar is the same, as the most common type of sugar in baking, confectionery sugar, is sucrose, being composed of 1 glucose and 1 fructose sugar molecule, effectively having the amount of sugar required for a lethal dose. However, fructose doesn't increase blood sugar levels, being instead broken down in the liver as fat, only reducing the required amount down to 62.5 grams. This is because sucrose is complex sugar, containing more energy in its longer chain of molecules, creating excess energy when broken down and again be broken down as glucose. 1 gram of pure sucrose will raise your blood sugar about 8 milligrams per deciliter. When talking about desserts, an obvious thing to consider is pure sugar content in confections, as the average apple pie size is 10 inches, contains 1 to 1.5 cups of sugar, making our starting point 250 grams. However, converting this 1 cup into grams, it instead converts 250 grams to 200 grams. This is because grams are a unit of mass, the innate amount of a substance, while a cup is a unit of volume, how much space the substance takes up. Since the granules of sugar are coarse, they create minute air pockets, filling up 50 grams of empty space. Pushing this through our estimates, Honami's blood sugar should be just below 3 times the lethal range, from this much sugar alone peaking at 1700 milligrams per deciliter. This estimate is deceiving since it ignores a fundamental element when talking about blood sugar, that being insulin. Insulin is a hormone that's produced by the pancreas that tells your cells to break down the sugars in your blood into energy, thusly reducing blood sugar. It's what prevents you from going into a sugar-induced coma every time you eat a piece of candy. According to the Diabetes Teaching Center at the University of California, San Francisco, on average, 1 unit of insulin is needed to drop the blood glucose by 50 milligrams per deciliter. This drop in blood sugar can range from 30 to 100 milligrams per deciliter or more, depending on individual insulin sensitivities and other circumstances. Since Honami is a girl in her teens, she would have a higher sensitivity to insulin. And while she does seem to have athletic hobbies such as swimming and gardening, these benefits get dragged down by her less than stellar diet. This 50 milligrams per deciliter blood glucose drop per unit of insulin is a good starting point. The amount of insulin produced by a lean, healthy individual is usually between 18 to 40 units per day, or 0.2 to 0.5 units per kilogram per day, depending on the same factors listed before. Again, not the worst health, but definitely can be better. So we'll say 31 units per day. And with that, our lethal dose becomes 268.75 grams of pure sucrose at 2,150 milligrams per deciliter. So, a little over 1 pie's worth of sugar should do it. However, let's not forget apples contain lots of sugars too. But which one to choose, as an apple's nutritional value varies depending on its type. Since Project Sekai takes place in Shibuya, Japan, the apples we will be using are Fuji apples, as this genus is native to Japan, and are favored in confections due to their high sugar content, at 16 to 18 grams. This quickly adds up as the average 10-inch pie requires 8 medium apples, racking up another half cup of sugar on their own. However, not all of the sugar is sucrose, as according to myfooddata.com, one small-sized Fuji apple is composed of sucrose, which is 3.77 grams, glucose, which is 4.42 grams, and fructose, which is 10.7 grams. So, you have 30.16 grams of sucrose and 35.63 grams of glucose. And while I just said that we need 8 medium-sized apples to fill a 10-inch pie, seeing as the pies Honami eats have more crust to filling ratio, small apples are all we need. And with that, considering 8 apples, the total would be 2,018.08 milligrams per deciliter. And we are not done just yet, as sugars aren't the only way to increase blood sugar levels. Carbohydrates such as all-purpose baking flour also breaks down into sugar. This is because carbohydrates, as the name suggests, are composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen chains, similar to that of sugar. Carbo, a shorthand for carbon, and hydrate, meaning water, carbon plus water, carbohydrates. This is why plants such as wheat can create energy from water and air, and why grain products such as all-purpose flour become sugars. According to the Cleveland Clinic, carbohydrates can be broken down into 3 different types of carbs: complex carbs, fiber and starches, and simple carbs and sugars. The amount of insulin required to counter the amount of carbs for the average person. We'll go with the ratio of every 13 grams of carbs requiring 1 unit of insulin, which makes 1 cup of all-purpose flour equaling 95.4 carbs, which is equivalent to 7.338 units of insulin, and thusly 1.5 cups equals 143.1 carbs, which is equivalent to 10.315 units of insulin, which equals to 515.75 milligrams per deciliter for blood sugar. However, we can see that the pies Honami eats have crust all around and not just around the base, meaning we need to increase the amount of flour to at least 2.5 cups, which equals 238.5 carbs, or equivalent to 18.346 units of insulin, and 917.31 milligrams to deciliter for blood sugar. So, 917.31 milligrams per deciliter from carbs plus the 2,018.08 milligrams per deciliter from the actual sugars. 1 pie equals 2,935.39 milligrams per deciliter. 2,150 divided by 2,935.39 equals 73.23% of a pie. Now, before you go into the comments, I know Honami's not walking around shoving 10-inch pies down her throat. We can simply divide the pie into separate serving sizes by referencing the Leonid main story card when Ichika bumps into her. we can see that they can easily fit in her hand. Because of this, we can assume that each pie is 4 inches long. By using the formula pi r squared, we roughly get 6 individual pies per 10-inch pie recipe, meaning that Honami can only eat 4.5 pies. That's a lot less pies than we expected. You may be wondering if there's anything we can do to reduce her blood sugar to let her eat more simple carbohydrates. There's not much we can do short of a blood transfusion, as by the time she burns off the sugars through intense exercise or urinating it out with copious amounts of water, it will be too little too late. But this is a moderate case scenario. Let's say Honami had the best genes and diet before overdosing on sugar. Running through the calculations again, we get just 2,970 divided by 2,935.39 equals 1 pie. Even the best case scenario, she can only eat about 6 pies before dying, meaning either she has some great genes that burn sugar at a rapid rate, or the apple pies in Japan are way less sweet than American confections. If you like this video, I might make another one about if you can actually stay hydrated on another person's sweat. When it's done, click here. And if you have any other ideas, tell me in the comments below.
But most diabolical of all, when no one was looking, he took 40 kegs, Wiz! That's as many as 4 10s, and that's
No good.